Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Conversations with, and today we're having a conversation with Rebecca Purvis. Hi Rebecca.
Hi Sarah, how are you going?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for coming today. So guys, let me tell you a little bit about Rebecca. She's the founder and managing director of the OT Group and has over 20 years of experience. Rebecca, you don't look like you have 20 years of experience.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind.
But 20 years of experience working within the disability field in Australia and the UK as well. And you have a wealth of information and knowledge on a number of different settings. You've worked in acute hospitals and inpatient rehab, community and private practice. And you worked with a number of different clients over physical as well as psychological disabilities, and you have specialized training and experience in complex home modifications for adults and kids, injury management, workplace rehab, and OT driver assessment and rehab. And wow, that is a huge diverse range. Tell me about where you're at the moment. You have OT Group.
That's right, yes. So Sarah, we are a group of experienced occupational therapists. We work across all over metropolitan Melbourne, as well as across regional Victoria and in Perth as well. We're a rapidly expanding OT service, and we're always looking to add OTs with different areas of experience to join our team.
That's right. Actually, being in the NDIS space, the need for OTs is so enormous that there is a long wait list at the moment. But today, specifically, we're not going to talk about other services. We want to just focus in on the in-house driving school that you've got, as well as the driver assessments that you do as part of the NDIS requirements that some participants would have. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what is driving assessment.
Yes, so a driving assessment incorporates essentially an off-road assessment where we look at an interview with a participant to collect information regarding their medical and disability background. We look at a vision and hearing tests. We look at physical as well as medications taken, sensory and cognitive screens. And then we also do a written road law test, and that usually goes for about an hour to an hour and a half, and we call that the off-road assessment. Once we've gained all the information off the road, we will then look at an on-road, but usually baseline lesson with an NDIS participant who hasn't had much experience on the road. And then,
sorry, go ahead.
And then following the on-road component, we then look towards putting together an NDIS driving program with lessons and ongoing development.
So if I was a NDIS participant looking for just to start my driving lessons, I'm a young person and I'm looking to get started, where would I go and how would I go about doing the whole process? How would I start? Good
question, Sarah. It is a bit of a process, and usually it starts with a medical report from the doctor, which then goes into Vic Roads. Then there would be a formal referral through our online website, and then we would put in what we call a clearance request to Vic Roads, requesting clearance to proceed with the OT program. And then once we receive clearance from Vic Roads, we then book them in and we commence their OT driving journey.
So would they have had to do their learners beforehand, or at which point would they start with their learner's license, or at least do the theory component before they do the practical? Would that be before they get the doctor's report? Maybe they could start there, or yeah, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, so if they're a participant who would like to obtain their learners, they could be under a potential to drive program with any of our OTs. They're all trained to manage potential to drive programs. And that OT would look at building the skills required, looking at road law knowledge and getting them really ready for their learners. And then what would happen once they've got their learners is we would switch them over to a driver-trained occupational therapist who would then manage the program from there.
So I could come to you potentially as a participant and say, look, I want to get started. Can you even help me out with my learners to get the theory part done? And then maybe an assessment, and then following with that driver training. Is that the sequence that I would go to?
Yes, that's correct, Sarah. So any one of our occupational therapists do these potential to drive programs. And then once they have obtained their learners, that's when it would come to one of our driver trained OTs.
And then you were talking about going to a doctor and getting a report. That would be just after you get maybe your learners and you've passed your learners, then you can go to the doctor. And what would generally be in this doctor's report, let's say?
It's a pretty basic report. More recently, it's become an online report for the GP to complete.
Yeah.
Pretty basic report, usually mentioning details around the disability, any medications taken. They may well have put the visual acuity down as well. And really it's a report that goes to Vic Roads with the medical history required to then allow Vic Roads medical review team to provide clearance to proceed with a driving program.
Would your OTs organise this and send it off to Vic Roads perhaps, or would that be a participant who has to do that?
Normally the participants don't know much about the process when they come to us. So we have a very detailed driving on our website, all the details around the driving programs and how they work. But usually our office management team would direct the participant's mother to go to the GP, get the medical report done. And then once the medical report's done, they would normally send a copy to us as well. And then we would request clearance from Vic Roads, at which time they would also send through a copy of the medical report to us.
So it sounds to me like basically if you wanted to get your driver's license, the first thing you've got to do is go and see an OT. Go and see an OT. They've got the whole path set out for you. And then it would go through the stages, and obviously it takes a little bit of time, and depending on the disability, the different avenues. And one of them might be vehicle modification, for example, or yeah. So how would that work in an OT setting and with your driver training as well?
Yeah. So we have, as part of, we have an in-house modified vehicle, and that has all the modifications from a left foot accelerator to all the hand controls for those participants who are unable to use their legs for driving. And we have specialised driving instructors who are well versed in teaching and looking at ways to drive that with the use of vehicle modifications. And we might do a number of lessons with the occupational therapist. So the occupational therapist can trial different, say for example, hand controls and work on which hand control is the most appropriate. And then we would put together a driving program for our specialised driving instructors to follow, at which time we would commence the program and the occupational therapist will get in and out of the car every few lessons to see how the participants are progressing with their program.
So you have the driver trainer and the OT in the car with you, helping.
Yeah. So the driving instructor is in the dual controlled vehicle, and the driving instructor sits in the passenger side of the car with the two pedals. So in case, usually our NDIS learners are brand new and they haven't usually been in a vehicle before. Yes. So often in the first few lessons, the driving instructor is doing quite a lot of intervening. So that may be grabbing the wheel, it may be using the pedals, and the occupation sits in the back, therapy sits in the back, and we start the program from scratch. So it's quite an exciting time for some participants.
It would be. I mean, driving just allows so much independence. And I can say that for myself and for my daughter as well, when she got her license, it was just, I never see her at home. She just goes wherever she wants to. And it's great. You can do what you want. You can go where you want. And I guess everyone is looking for that independence and to be able to go through and be guided by someone who will hold your hand and take you through the steps at a difficult time, because there is quite a lot to learn. Is so wonderful. And then what happens at the driving test? Does the OT come along as well?
Yeah, so what we do, Sarah, is we start the program from obviously the learners, and obviously there's a number of lessons that they need to do, particularly if they're under 21, they need to do 120 hours. If they're over 21, which often they are in the NDIS space, we need to get them ready for their Ps, and that every now and again the occupational therapist gets back in the vehicle, has a look at how they're progressing with the driving instructors, specialised driving instruction. And because we've got such great driving instructors we've been working with for years, normally the driving instructor will advise us OTs that they're ready for their Ps, at which time we would do the final assessment, which will be on a big roads test route. And it will be with the occupational therapist in the back, who's the assessor, and the driving instructor in the front, always to keep ensuring that we're all safe.
Wonderful. So Rebecca, tell me, are you guys NDIS registered as an organization?
Yes, we are registered.
Super. And as we know, there's 3 types of funding that's available for plans. It's either self-managed, plan managed, or NDIA managed. So depending on the type of plan that you've got and that specific category, you can either go directly through an NDIS service provider like you, an OT, to get the work done, or you can come through a plan manager. Let's say a participant has NDIA managed funding for that specific category. What would they do when they come and see you?
So what happens when we have completed the baseline lesson with the participant, they're brand new to driving, we would then put forward to NDIA a quote, and that's usually for a number of lessons, and it needs to be NDIA approved, so before we can commence the program with the participant.
So this process can take up, depending on how NDIS is going with their quotes, it can take a couple of weeks. What have you found with that?
I think it's been very difficult over COVID times, because I think there's been quite a lot of backlog, and we've also been on and off the road a lot. So we've had lockdowns where we haven't been able to be out on the road, and I think that's had a bit of an impact on the other end of the quote approvals. And I would say that we've experienced probably them taking a few months lately.
Yeah, it does take a bit of time, but while that's going on, you can already start preparing and learning about the road rules. Tongue twister. And there's plenty to be done in that space. So planning is important.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, excellent. Perfect. That I think we can wrap driver training. We just wanted to give a little example of what could happen, but there's plenty on your website. By the way, where are you based here in Melbourne?
Here in Melbourne, we are on Gordon Street in Maribyrnong. We've got a practice there. Yeah, and we're also based, we have a practice in Bendigo.
Oh, fantastic. And do you have capacity to take on driver assessments and specialized driver training now?
We have a number of driver trained OTs, so we are able to, we do have capacity to take on new referrals.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'd love to talk to you about other things or about OTs and what you guys do. But for now, thank you so much for coming, and see you next time.
That sounds great, Sarah. Appreciate your time.
Cheers, bye.